We have breaking news tonight, which is that Jimmy Kimmel is maybe back on the air. I think we can put this statement from Disney up on the screen, which they released this afternoon. Disney said, we're going to bring Jimmy Kimmel back Tuesday night. And then Sinclair announced that its affiliates would not be airing Kimmel. It's unclear right now what Nexstar will do, but Donald Trump and, well, I shouldn't say Trump, but Trump World is sort of framing this as local stations, many of which, Dave, you know, because you've been around the country, are responsive to much more pro-Kirk audiences, standing up to Hollywood, standing up to big media. That's what a source close to the FCC told me, and the Deal told me recently. So what do you make of that dynamic that Trump World is running with, that here we have Sinclair and the little guys standing up to Disney and big Hollywood?
It's very convenient that this is populism rhetoric and wrapping around what is essentially a good deal for a large corporation. And Sinclair's not the biggest media corporation, but it owns hundreds of TV stations. It wants to acquire more. It's not doing it in the same splashy way that Nexstar was, one big acquisition. It's adding them all the time. And so I guess I'd do that if I was them. Carr has not admitted a mistake, but that's probably a better line for him to go down than easy way or the hard way. I think that's already infamous. The extent that anything can last a news cycle, I think the way that Carr presented that has lasted. It is a mnemonic for people who think that the administration is leaning on companies to go easy on the president. But that's when they frame it like that, and they got very, very emotional after the Charlie Kirk assassination, which I understand. When they frame it like that, they do open it up to these calls of censorship, and you can thread things together and say, well, it follows that a president who's sanctioning the law firms that sued him wants to knock media companies out of their perch if they're not nice to him. Like he's giving a lot of ground to the libs on this one, I think, in the way he's presented it.
Interesting, because on the right, and I know you've seen this, immediately Benny Johnson ran with, we got Jimmy Kimmel fired or something like that. I'm paraphrasing him because we don't know that Kimmel actually was fired. It looks like he never was fired, but was always indefinitely hanging in suspension limbo. But the right has seen this as a huge rallying cry. Many of my friends, honestly, Ted Cruz sort of dissented from it, but people were saying this public interest standard has existed forever. The FCC just never used it. And hey, if the networks are going to be biased towards conservatives for years with no threats, what's a little threat after, a pretty tasteless joke by Jimmy Kimmel? And so it's playing out very differently in Trump circles, which see this as sort of like the thing that was wrong with the old right is that they wouldn't have pushed this lever.
No, that has been the discourse. Do you want to be a libertarian who doesn't change the way the government works and doesn't use power to reorder things, or do you want to be a national conservative who does? That makes sense. The hypocrisy that people were pointing out from liberals, though, was really about the way that liberals pursue this. They do not, and maybe they don't need to lean on the FCC in the same way or on companies the same way to cover them fairly. They had a monopoly on, let's say, the dominant pop culture for a long time. But what did they have to police speech? It was boycott campaigns, color change, move on, to an extent, Media Matters. It was these groups that conservatives did not cheer that on. When they had the power, like Elon Musk, or I guess the money, they would sue and call that collusion. But I hate First Amendment debates when they're the dumb version, that the First Amendment means I don't get to never be on TV. There just was a left-wing sort of group cancellation, which was organized people in an online, a little bit in public. I mean, the biggest failure in this regard, I guess, was trying to cancel Netflix over Dave Chappelle. But just organize people, but don't lean on them in a government way, because that's going to get out. And this is a thing that liberals had in power. As much as and people can go back to the examples of liberals using their power, like the IRS scandal under Lois Lerner, but they didn't come out and go on a podcast and say, there's this great woman named Lois Lerner, and she's going to deny groups their tax status because we don't like it when conservative groups are unfair to us. Like they had the advantage of assuming that the media was going their way and culture was going their way, but they didn't lean in the same way. And that's still what I'm wondering in the shakeout. If it looks like the Trump administration is using its power to lean on the media, there's a natural, not just libertarian, but American backlash to that. Don't tell me what to watch.
Yeah, that's interesting because it's not as though, right, there weren't broadcast licenses being threatened in this like specific sense.
Mhm.
There was I think that's
Yeah, Bill
interesting.
Clinton signs the Telecommunications Act. It's there. There are when liberals want to go after Fox News, they have color change, and these other groups do it. They don't have. They don't
Yeah.
say, Barack Obama, can you please break up Fox News and break up News Corp and take away Murdoch's citizenship or whatever. They might now. They've gotten a little
And they
bit
might
hot
spy
now.
on the Fox reporters like James Rosen
Yeah,
and
yeah.
actually James Risen too. They might do a little of that.
But again, not say it in public. This is the rare case of something that is said in public being more interesting than the thing that is said secretly. Because Carr wrote the Project 2025 chapter on the FCC, and he's said various things about this over the years.
Mhm.
But that does seem that I'm stuck on that because I'm pretty capacious when it comes to let's just fight it out what different media are saying. Let's just have it out without censoring them. And that left a bad taste for me. If I can imagine if President J.B. Pritzker or whatever has an FCC chair doing that, I can imagine the backlash. I would support the backlash.
Well, and I actually want to ask you about how the left is rallying actually
Mhm.
around what happened as well. This is not to say The View is representative of the left, but here's a little taste for everyone of what happened on ABC's midday airwaves when The View finally addressed as the entire country was waiting with bated breath on the edge of our collective seat for what Whoopi Goldberg had to say. This is what happened.
Did y'all really think we weren't going to talk about Jimmy Kimmel? I mean, have you watched the show over the last 29 seasons? So no one silences us.
I want to start by thanking our loyal viewers for demanding truth and courage from us. We deserve it, you deserve it, and we will give it to you.
You know, freedom of speech undergirds our democracy. And our founders were very, very clear on that. Our founders drafted the First Amendment specifically to protect the rights of citizens to criticize the government.
The government itself is using its weight and power to bully and scare people into silence.
The government cannot apply pressure to force someone to be silenced.
This is what dictators and authoritarians do. It does not matter the ideology.
Sorry to replay that for you, Dave. I know you caught it live, as you do every episode of The View. But Zohran Mamdani, whose campaign you followed very closely, was scheduled to do a town hall with local New York City ABC affiliate, pulled out of that. Then when Kimmel announced Disney announced Kimmel would be back tomorrow night, Mamdani said he was looking to reschedule that town hall. Rachel Maddow reacted tonight, I think ahead of her Kamala Harris interview, by saying the Colbert show, so his late night show, should be uncanceled by CBS. This has been a source of like significant energy on the left. And as someone who sort of followed the left throughout the like cancel culture era, whatever we want to call it, is this interesting at all, Dave? I mean, it's not surprising, but there is now this like real, almost like old school boomer lib energy around free speech again.
There is, and you said the boomer word. That's the thing I've noticed in covering protests this year. Not the ones Andy covers, but protests are older than they were 8 years ago in the first Trump term, and you do see more representation of older people with the argument that they thought they were passing down a different kind of country to their children. It's less use driven. Now there are young people at protests, but I do see this. A lot of the energy and argumentation comes from people who say there was a norm, and we thought we had that norm, and anytime that norm is being stripped away by the Supreme Court and by Trump, we have to fight it. And they look behind them, and there are fewer young people who agree with this. Fewer young people, for example, who care what is on late night TV. Although every late night shows, every good piece of TV lives on in clips on TikTok, etc. So people know who Kimmel is. But yes, it was fairly organic too, because ABC had already not endeared itself to liberals based on the George Stephanopoulos settlement. Before that, the way Disney fought and then bent to Ron DeSantis. And I'm not. My colleague Max Tani would know more about this because he's a media reporter. Anecdotally, I know people who were canceling Disney Plus accounts, and it reminded me of I guess this is a year ago. Knowing people who are canceling their Washington Post accounts, and I guess they're more likely to tell me because I used to work there. But I would not be surprised if Disney was taking some sort of hit, because Kimmel was in a good negotiating position in order to get back and not be on Sinclair. They are going to air a show that's not going to air in every market. Were they losing money because of the way this was handled? I assume they were. And so that's the power that a lot of these older activists have. They subscribe to these accounts. Maybe their kids free ride off the Disney Plus account, or they got it for their grandkids. I do think there was a consumer boycott. And again, more organic than 10 years ago when a lot of cancel culture was AstroTurf, was groups saying we're going to organize people and get Bill O'Reilly off the air or protest Tucker. It does. There are things in this second Trump term that have seemed a little bit prefab and they haven't really worked out. This felt very different. And also, just the different worlds people are living in. That's not an original point, but they're just, I think liberals were surprised how much appreciation and love there was for Charlie Kirk, who if they knew it all, they knew maybe their kid watched a clip of his. They didn't know how important he was to the movement. And I do think conservatives, Kimmel's ratings are easy to make fun of, but Kimmel had a lot of credibility among liberals, mostly from the first Trump term. He went from being fairly non-political, making fun of Trump because that was the reflex, to being this advocate for saving the Affordable Care Act. And he had a lot more appeal among liberals than I would have expected at the start of the cycle. Colbert was a bit more obvious. Colbert became not just a Biden booster, but a vaccine booster. Kimmel, I do think that the tools that liberals have right now and the kind of movement they have was very good at mobilizing around this.
I'd forgotten all about the Bill Cassidy, Jimmy Kimmel, Obamacare dust up. That's such an interesting callback.
Where Cassidy felt the need to say we need to pass the Jimmy Kimmel test if we want to reform Obamacare, and then he ended up not to go through the whole thing. He ended up voting for the repeal, didn't pass. But Kimmel had that level of importance, and there's been a sense in this term that the media doesn't have that level of importance anymore. Not wrong. Just the ratings are down. Anyone I talk to who's under 30 doesn't get doesn't have linear TV. Period. Doesn't watch it. So for them to have that kind of punch, that is a representation of an older set of activists, but lots of them, millions of older people who were really involved in this.
Are you looking to support more made in the USA manufacturing this year? Like I am, definitely. Whether it's home decor, clothing, or furniture, it's become extremely difficult to find high-quality products that aren't made overseas. A recent Forbes report revealed that annual earnings for small businesses across the U.S. have dropped by over 75% just since 2023. Small businesses in this country are struggling to stay afloat, and with the likes of Amazon and Target dominating the market, it's no wonder. Basically, any small business owner here in the U.S. will tell you the same thing. That's where a warehouse comes in, your one-stop shop for artisanal home goods made exclusively by small businesses. With hundreds of products to choose from, they're deeply committed to supporting American manufacturers. Their easy-to-navigate online marketplace lets you browse a wide range of independent makers, and you can feel good knowing that your purchase supports real people and small family-run businesses. A warehouse believes that true luxury isn't about fancy labels or big brand names. It's about the dedication, creativity, and care that goes into every product. Help a warehouse hit their goal of supporting over 100 small businesses this year. Head to awarehouseshop.com and use code PARTY for 15% off your first order. That's awarehouseshop.com, code PARTY.